Move this out of my way so I don't trip. Have you or anyone you know gone through tragedy or difficult challenges? As I share my story with you, my hope is that you can visualize and feel what it's like to move from surviving to thriving and the steps I took to do that. The day was February 9th, 2010. It was also my son's 16th birthday. I was working as a supervisor in a sawmill, and 3 hours into my shift, I had to unjam a giant log that got stuck. The logs we were cutting are called Cants. Cants are 14 inches thick, 10 to 22 feet long, and weigh at least 1,000 pounds each. It was my job to keep production moving. I made a decision to crawl into a tight, confined space to manually free up this cant that was stuck on edge against a large steel beam. This created a massive wall of wood in behind this cant. As soon as this cant was freed, someone turned on the chains, and I was immediately being crushed alive by 12,000 pounds of wood. I could hear my body cracking, gurgling, and crunching. It felt like my head was going to explode. There was so much pressure. I thought to myself, if this doesn't stop, I'm going to get ripped into two pieces and die. I then blacked out. My coworkers then performed miraculous feats of strength to rescue me from this machine. By the time I was freed, I was not breathing, and they all thought I was dead. I had now been unconscious and without oxygen for about 12 minutes. Right before they were about to perform CPR, miraculously I started breathing. The immense pain was overwhelming. I was fighting for every breath, and I had to remind myself to breathe in and then breathe out. I was rushed to the hospital. The ambulance ride was horrific. I could feel every vibration and bump throughout my spine. When I arrived at the hospital, I was told directly by paramedics and doctors that my organs were failing. That's what their main concern was. I also had an anoxic brain injury, a punctured and collapsed lung, multiple broken bones, and severe soft tissue damage. There was a lot of confusion and panic. I didn't understand what was happening. I felt weak, and something had to change, because I really thought I was going to die. But then I was touched by an angel. That was my wife. She's my best friend and biggest support. We are deeply in love, and she makes me want to be better. Now, I was unrecognizable to Jen at first because I had been bleeding out of my eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. I also had severe and deep bruising. My injuries were critical, but I now had hope because I wasn't alone. Now, my accident has left me with numerous invisible injuries. I have a permanent brain injury and cognitive disorder. Just imagine having a concussion that never goes away. I also have severe spine, lung, shoulder, and nerve damage. I get between 70 to 90 painful injections in my head, spine, and shoulder every 4 months to help me. Now, going through all that revealed to me who my true friends are. Now, growing up, I knew a caring family, the Dunkleys. Their house was my home away from home. They always made me feel welcome and loved. Their son, Ron, is like a brother to me and my best friend. After my accident, Ron would drive all the way to Abbotsford and take me into Vancouver for some sporting events. After one of those trips, I apologized to Ron. I thought I wasn't as much fun anymore. Ron said, "Henczel, don't be ridiculous. It was one of the funnest nights I've ever had. I'll always be here for you, brah." That meant the world to me, knowing I could always count on him. Unfortunately, a few months later, that would all change. Ron was a fireman and avid football fan. He traveled to almost every pro sports stadium in North America. He was in Seattle when he got into the most horrific accident. He was hit and dragged by a train, ripping his lower body to shreds. He went through over 40 surgeries before infection finally took over his body. I saw him take his last breath. He passed away surrounded by family and closest friends. Now, on top of everything else I was going through, I now had to deal with the death of my best friend just 11 months after my accident. In addition to all my other injuries, I also suffer from severe post-traumatic stress disorder, one of the most frustrating conditions I have to deal with. Now, one of the symptoms of PTSD is exaggerated startle reflex. So let me explain. One day I'm having a really difficult time. My entire mind and body were on edge. I went to pick up my favorite smoothie to cheer me up, the Mighty Kale. Now, the last thing I wanted to do was see or talk to anybody, so I sat at a table at the far corner with my back turned to the door. Now, little did I know, a group of people had quietly come through the door and were now standing directly behind me. What happened next? That actually happened. A loud mariachi band in Abbotsford. Now, that would startle most people, but I was having a full-on panic attack. I was shaking, I was covered in sweat, and I couldn't breathe. That feeling lasted for hours. But that's how I explain to people what having PTSD is like, a mariachi band hiding around every corner. Now, people ask me how I stay positive and overcome my challenges. I first had to let go and accept the fact that I wasn't the same person I was before my accident. I had to learn everything all over again. So I did what I could until I could do more, slowly building my confidence. I also made the choice to get better, not bitter. The only thing that stands between you and what you want in life is the will to do it and the faith to believe it's possible. To get what you have never had, you must do what you have never done. For me, that was taking action. That extra step, not making excuses. Taking that extra step meant I was able to achieve what most would consider impossible. In the last 2 years, I graduated with my Bachelor's of Business degree. I wrote and authored my first book, Miracle in a Mill. I co-created Story Academy. I spoke on the TEDx stage, and I am now a certified practitioner and coach of NLP. Achieving the impossible also included the most powerful strategy that has made the biggest difference in my life: embracing and telling my story. I was able to move from tragedy to triumph when I realized this wasn't the end of my story, but the beginning. When I changed my story, I changed my life. The stories of struggles and challenges are the best stories. Be honest about your obstacles and how you overcame adversity, because you can actually help and inspire others to rise above. Because everyone can relate to experiencing difficulties. You have no idea who you can help with your story. You have a story, and your story matters. Now, did you know that stories can activate up to 7 areas of the human brain? Not only are the language processing parts of our brain activated, but every other area we would use when experiencing the events of the story ourselves. In a 2006 study published in the journal Neuroimage, researchers in Spain determined that when it comes to inspiring people to understand a new change in themselves, storytelling is the only thing that works. Storytelling is one of the most powerful ways we have to communicate and motivate. To restart my life, I had to focus on what I can do, not what I can't. Remember the wood I was crushed by are called cants? Thinking of all the things you can't do can also be crushing. Let me explain. I would tell myself, I can't do any meaningful activity. I can't recover from this. I can't live a fulfilling life. I was crushed by cants, literally and figuratively. But now I'm crushing my cants. And I want you to know you can crush your cants too. Thank you.